Hey there, this is Bill Frangos, the Fish God. I'm going to bring to you another fly today. Today we're going to tie up a parachute Adams. It's a pretty good pattern to have in your box. I tie these from size 12 down to about size 22. Occasionally I'll do a 24 if I have to. They're an awesome pattern. They imitate mayflies. Occasionally you can get them when their caddis are hatching as well. But it's basically a mayfly imitation. I'm going to go ahead and start this. What I'm using as thread is an 8/0 Veevus thread. It's just your standard 8/0 Veevus. You can use whatever you prefer to use. I'm going to go ahead and start this at about the 2/3 or 3/4 point right in there. I'm going to lay a little thread base down. Once I get to the end of the hook shank, which you'll know you get to the end before you start going around the bend. If the thread hangs straight down, it should be about at the hook barb. Trim off your tag end. First thing we're going to do is some tailing, and I'm going to be using some Coq de Leon. So I'm going to take a pretty healthy chunk of fibers on a size 12. You can go from just a few fibers down to a healthy chunk. I may have a little more than a dozen fibers there. The way I'm holding it is I'm taking the fibers and holding them at a 90-degree angle so the tips line up. So I'm going to pull them down at about a 90-degree angle, and then I'm going to pull the stem away from the fibers. Once you got that, squeeze the butts together, and your tips should be lined up real nice. At this point, I'm going to measure. I'm going to bring them up to the hook and say, okay, I want them about a hook shank, maybe a little bit longer in length. I'm going to transfer that by bringing my fingers over to it and put them right up against the butt. That's going to be my tie-in point, right between my fingers. So where my two fingers meet is where I want to tie those butts down to get the tail the right length. I'm going to pinch the thread between my fingers, okay, and come straight down the other side. And I'm going to literally pull the thread out of my fingers where I'm squeezing it, okay? That lays it right on top. I'm going to come back up, pinch the thread, come straight down the other side, pull the thread out, okay? I'll do it one more time. Pinch it, pull. Now you can check and make sure it's the right length, which it appears to be the right length. Wow, what a change. Here we go. I'm going to wrap forward. I can trim off these fibers. In fact is, I'm going to trim them off a little bit. You don't really have to trim off a whole lot. Trim off a few of those fibers. I'm going to bring this thread up. Actually, I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to dub the body first. The body I'm going to dub, and you could put in the post first, which I considered doing just now, and that was my hesitation. But, you know, the way I learned it was a little different than the way it's taught a lot of times. And the way I learned it is dub the body, go ahead and then put on your post and your hackle. And so that's what we're going to do. What I've got here is some muskrat dubbing. Okay, and I've got the wispiest little bunch of muskrat dubbing, and I'm just going to stretch that little dubbing a little bit. Okay, and whatever I pulled off is almost always too much. It's easier to add dubbing than it is to take it off. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that up on my thread. Give it a little twist, it'll hold the thread. If you come down to the bottom of your dubbing, and you can start from the top or the bottom, and just start twisting by pulling the bobbin down, and you can see I'm moving the fly by pulling the bobbin down. If you pull the bobbin and have that thread tight, dubbing will go a lot better, because what you're doing when you're putting on dubbing is you're getting the fibers to spin around the thread. If that thread is loose, it's all trying to wrap together, and we don't want it to wrap together. We want the dubbing to wrap around the thread. So when you hold that thread tight, that's exactly what happens. I'm going to go ahead and slide this dubbing down, and you notice I can slide this dubbing. That's because the fibers of the dubbing are adhering to each other and not the thread. So I'm just literally squeezing and twisting, always twisting the same direction. Okay? And you can make that a pretty thin little noodle, and that's a pretty thin little noodle right there. What I can do then is slip it up, and I can just pinch it and slide it. See how I slid it right up to the hook shank? And then I can start wrapping. So if you look, I'm going straight up. Do you see thread behind the dubbing? I'm going to do my first wrap backwards to cover that thread up. Okay? Now, I don't want to go too far back because I don't want to push the tail down. And then I'm going to do touching turns where the one turn touches the one before. Okay? And I'm just going to wrap that forward. Now, if I get here, like I did this time, and don't have enough dubbing, I can always add a little bit more, which is really not a problem. So I'm going to stretch out another little piece. Don't have to do it in front of the camera this time. Stretch out another little piece. I'm going to lay it up on my thread. Pull my thread tight, twist. Keep twisting in the same direction. Every time, same direction. Slide it up to where I'm going to start it. And continue from where I left off. Now I'm going to about the 2/3 point, and I'm going to kind of build that thorax just a little bit. When you get down to the bottom and you want to finish this, just give it, you can back wrap one and just twist that down, thin it out a little bit, okay? Because I want my thread to finish in front of that bump. There we go, right at the head of all that material. And you see a couple little, the muskrat's got little guard hairs, and you'll see a few of those. If you don't like them, get rid of them. Most chances you won't even notice them. At this point, I've got some material that typically used for egg patterns, and it's called McFlyfoam. Okay, and I've got the clown package. It's got multiple colors, so you'll see orange and yellow and pink and hot pink, and pick whatever color is going to be visible in your waters, and it'll be fine. When it comes out of the package, you'll see it's a pretty good chunk. Okay, I've basically separated it, which this is stuff that if you've got rough fingers, it will adhere to your fingers like Velcro. So, you can use what I use is an emery board, and the fact is you can probably see an emery board right back here on my vise. And if you emery board your fingers, okay, and this is just something you can steal from your spouse. I'm sure they've got one. Mine always does. Or you can go to the dollar store and get a whole bunch of them for almost nothing. And emery your fingers, they'll be nice and smooth. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to attach this to the top as the post of the parachute. So this is what the parachute's going to be made out of. And there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm gonna do this one one way where you wrap it around the thread. Okay. So you see how I've got that wrapped around the thread? I'm going to lift it up and slide it down to where I want it on the hook. And then once you've got that, you have to actually separate this out because you want a couple wraps in the same spot. And I want these to be good, tight wraps. Okay? So I'm going to wrap it and really cinch down on that thread. Okay? And you can figure eight these. You can do this any way you want, but they have to be good, tight wraps. You don't want this post to spin on you. Okay? So I've got a few wraps in there. Then I'm going to tie a little bit of it down, just a little bit on the front down. And then I'm going to fold it over and do a little bit on the back down. So you see how that it has a little bit behind there? That's good because when I tie that in, that's going to keep it from spinning. So I'm going to tie that down, pull nice and tight, really get a good base on there. Okay. Now I've got that post on there pretty well. It's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to hold the post up with my right hand. And I'm going to come up and around it, and I'm going to actually go up the post. So you see how I've got a little hook in my finger on my right hand? That little hook is just carrying it so it doesn't slide back down the post. Because if I let go of it right there, it's going to want to pull it back down. I want to keep that finger just so I can wrap up the post. And I'm going to wrap it as I'm pulling pretty hard on this, keeping the post going straight up. I'm going to wrap up the post a ways. And then I'm going to ease up just a little bit and start coming back down the post and wrap back down the post. And I'm going to wrap all the way to the bottom. And this is, you'll do this posting with different materials. This is a very easy material to work, and I love the effect. I can see it. And I like the way it actually helps a little bit in flotation. It takes floating powder well, like Frog's Fanny or any of the loon powders. Once you've gotten to the bottom, go ahead and make a few more wraps just to kind of clean it up and make sure it's not going to go anywhere. Okay? You see how that post sticks up nicely? Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep a couple of feathers. And the feathers we're going to prep are a grizzly and a brown. Now, I could have used Hackle, grizzly and brown Hackle fibers for the tail. I just used a Coq de Leon. I don't really think the fish care that much, but you would use brown and grizzly for that. I'm going to hold these up so you can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to strip off a little more than 1/4 inch off the end of the stem. So you see I've got some bare stem there. That's what I'm going to tie in. And I'm going to do that on both of these. And you can tie these in separately if you'd like, or you can tie them in together if you'd like. That's really up to you. You're the one tying the fly. But you see I've got a couple of stems. I'm going to try and bring them a little closer that are stripped. And those stripped stems are what we're going to tie down. I'm going to match those up. And on the feathers, you've got a dark side and you've got a light side. So if I flip that around, see that's the light side. And I flip it back around, that's the dark side. It's the same with the Grizzly. One shows the markings real well. And then when I flip it over, it won't show the marking. They're kind of muted. Okay? So I want the muted side facing me. Okay? Or the lighter side. And then I'm going to try and get those stems lined up a little bit. I could have stripped these together and wouldn't have had that issue, but that's okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these stems, line them up just a little bit better. There we go. I'm going to place these stems to where they're not going to affect the hook eye, but I'm going to wrap them forward towards the hook eye, and then I'm going to wrap back over them towards the post. And you're wondering, why does he have all that extra stem? Because now I'm going to lift them up and I'm going to hold them against the post. Okay, so I'm going to hold the post and the hackle together. Get my fingers to work. There we go. And I'll drape that over my hand there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back up and start wrapping up the post. And you see the hackle stems? You can see them right there. I'm going to wrap the hackle stems against the post. Because when we hackle this, what we're going to do is hackle down the post. So I want the hackle to actually start about at the height of where my the thread ends on the post. So I wrapped up and then I'm going to wrap back down. So this is going to be a nice sturdy post. And the hackle stems are wrapped in. They're not going to pull out. I'm going to wrap back down to the bottom. Okay. And I'm going to drape it on this side. Okay. So it's draped over the near side of the hook, so it's closest to me. I'm going to take a little more dubbing and cover all of that thread up. So both in front of and behind the post, you see all that thread? I don't want to see all that thread. I'm just going to cover that up. It's going to build a little thorax and cover it up and make this fly look real good when it's all done, all said and done. So again, I'm going to stretch that a little bit. I laid it up there. I'm going to stretch it a little bit. I'm going to twist it all one direction, holding the bobbin tight, twisting it up or twisting it down, depending on which way you want to go. So I got a little ball here down at the bottom. I'm going to stretch it a little more and twist it a little more. I like a nice thin dubbing noodle. I can always go over it more than once. It'll just make for a stronger fly. So I'm just going to cover up my thread wraps. Kind of pull that out of the way as you go. You can do a little X down here at the bottom. Come back around. Do another little X at the bottom. Okay, so now I'm done with the dubbing. I'm going to come around the post towards me. Okay, and then I'm going to drape it right there because I'm going to finish the fly going around the post. So now I'll pull the feathers off to the side, and I'm going to start wrapping the feathers together the same way I wrap the thread. So you see how my fingers are grabbing it and pulling it around? And I'm just going to start wrapping down the post. And I can wrap both of them together. And you can actually let go of the post. If your post is tied right, the post will stand by itself. Once I get to the bottom, okay, where the hackle now is meeting the body, I'm going to pull these fibers kind of down, take my thread over and keep it right close to the hook shank and do several wraps with my thread around the post, just like we were posting it at the bottom of the post. Okay, and now it's tied in. I can let go of the feathers. They're not going to go anywhere. Fact is, I'm going to trim the feathers. Okay. What I've got now, I've got this ready to go. All it needs is to be finished. There's two ways I could finish this. I can do the whip finish around the post. So I can go this way around the post with my whip finishing tool. Or I can come in front of this head and finish it in front of the head. The problem with finishing it in front of the head is you'll trap down fibers. So I prefer to go around the post. I'm going to zoom the camera out a little bit. Out. So you can actually see what I'm going to do, what my hands are doing. I'm going to take the thread. I'm going to pull a little more thread out so I can grab it with my whip finisher. Okay. I'm going to grab the whip finisher, bring this up, and I'm going to rock it into a vertical position. Some people take the fly out of the vise and turn it so you can whip finish it like you would normally. It's really not a big deal to pull it out, to rock your hand a little bit and finish it this way. At this point, I'm going to drop out of the bend, pull the hook up, pull it tight, and that dog's ready to hunt right there. So, of course, this wing's too big, right? I mean, that's way too big. I'm going to stretch it up, and what's cool about this McFlyfoam is when I cut it, it comes down into a little pom-pom. So now let's zoom back in. I'm going to go ahead and trim my thread. I'm going to zoom back in first. Get it to lock on my zoom again. There we go. Well, little technical difficulty that happens when you're the way I am. Technical difficulty is part of the process. There we go. I'm going to trim that thread off. I not only have to tie flies, I got to figure out how to use the camera, which is, I mean, that's part of what we do. We learn as we go. So now you can see when you look here, outside of one stray thread there, which I'm not sure how that happened. I got one stray thread on the bottom, but it looks pretty good. And you see it from the top, that's what you see on the water. You'll see that little post. You see it from the side, there's no hackle down here. If there is, you can trim them out. So if you do see a few that don't belong, trim them out. And it's really not an issue. Notice how I'm propping it with my fingers there so I can actually get to it. But there's your parachute atoms, and it's like I said, that's a producer. It almost always works when you got mayflies on the water. And you can change the color. If you don't like gray, you can go to greens, you can do them in browns, you can do them in whatever color is prevalent on the water. If you've got PMDs, you can tie basically the same fly with the PMD colors that you have prevalent on your waters. You know, it's the technique I'm trying to show you, not the fly. But the technique works, and you'll really enjoy this one. Thank you. You can always find me on YouTube at FishGod1. Thanks. Bye-bye.